everyone, I'm Alanah or Alanah, and welcome to my channel where today we are talking about episode 6 of The Last of Us on HBO. I've been doing weekly discussion podcasts. The last one was with Mike Flanagan and Kate Siegel. Make sure you check that out about episode 5. We may not have one for this episode just because there's a video game conference called the DICE Awards happening this week. So a bunch of my guests are traveling. I'm traveling. I'll try, but I'm not positive if we will be able to do it. But we still have time to do this little one-on-one chat. First things first, I think that episode 6 was a real treat in terms of references. Definitely an episode that felt like it was a delight for game fans. I'm not sure how non-game fans will have taken it, but there were so many Easter eggs in this episode. Not only the two characters that we open up with, but also Jackson, which is a pretty big deviation from the first game, but not so much from the second. Of course, this directly leads into the second game. And life in Jackson was awesome. That town looked absolutely incredible and so similar to it does in part 2. I was blown away. Again, this show in terms of set design is absolutely incredible. Like one of the best that I've ever seen. And I'd be surprised if many people disagree with me on that. I think we may have seen Dina. I'm not sure. There's a very weird encounter where Ellie's sitting at a table inside that dance hall where they have that dance and the argument in part 2 of the game, of course. And somebody's staring at her and she goes, "What?" And I'm pretty confident that was Dina based on the ponytail, but no confirmation as of yet. That I'm aware of. Let me know if I missed something. This is, however, the first episode where I've really felt like the game did a better job of something. So we start this out with 3 months passing and it is finally winter. And it is absolutely beautiful. Some of the shots in this episode, I'm not sure who the director of photography is, but some of the just individual shots of this episode were absolutely stunning. Just beautiful, breathtaking work. And while we do start out with two characters walking, their relationship has developed at this point. Ellie is still pretty brash and forward and maybe doesn't have great social skills in some cases. Joel at least responds a little bit more now. There is a back and forth. We are clearly seeing a bond between the two of them. But not too much, which is obviously a big theme of this episode, is that we don't want Joel to open up to her too fast, and he's still very, very guarded and defensive of certain things, like Sarah, because that is ultimately what leads to our conflict in this episode. We see Ellie once again kind of learning about a life that she is never going to have, or that she thinks she won't have. And I think as part of that, we also see probably one of the first vulnerable or heartfelt moments from her as a character, and I feel like the timing of this is really well earned. She says something along the lines of like, everybody I've ever trusted or everybody I've ever loved has left me. It's either died or left me. And that's really the first time that she's admitted that she's needed help. And it happens a couple of times in this episode. I feel like before now, and again, I always expected the show to go in this direction and it's nice to watch it pay off. Before now, she seemed very unwilling to admit that she needed help. Defensive, forcefully independent, even though she's not independent at all. And she's finally at a point where she admits that she needs him. And I think that's probably the biggest reason why this episode took place in the town rather than where the conversations take place in the game, which is the dam, which they just kind of pass through. Because grounding it in that home setting of a family and a community is really what the episode is all about. And how two people become family throughout the journey. This is also at the same time that we're seeing some sort of cracks in the relationship between Joel and Tommy, which was a sort of side plot drama that I wasn't super into. It's not like I thought it was bad, I just wasn't that interested in it. Of course, there was a ton of tension seeing Tommy for the first time. Oh my god, the dog coming up to Ellie, all of that. There was a lot of tension in a lot of these reveals that happened back to back in this episode, which I feel like was paced very well. Seeing the two brothers hug each other and then have a conversation, but I feel like I wasn't quite as into the melodrama about the life that they left behind and who they were and the things that they did. I think the performances were fantastic and you fully believe that they have like this sort of pent-up awkwardness as family members who've been estranged for a while, maybe would have, who've changed and maybe lie on different sides of political spectrums. I think that they nailed that in terms of performance, even in terms of the way it was shot. That stuff is very expertly executed. And I do think that the melodrama, as I'm calling it, with Tommy and Joel is necessary to actually see Joel be willing to be vulnerable for the first time. This is the first time he admits to being afraid or feeling incapable of anything, and he kind of needed Tommy to be there to be able to do that. And I felt like that was a very powerful choice of like, he's got this really brave face on for everybody else, especially Ellie, of course. And it's got to be a huge relief to him to not have to do that around Tommy, which of course he doesn't. So I love that choice as well, and I felt like that made sense. But yeah, I do love the final vulnerability of the heart-to-heart scene between Tommy and Joel. I thought that was just beautiful. And of course also leads very quickly into the next one, which is that heart-to-heart dramatic scene with Ellie and Joel, which is very similar to the game, but I actually think in this case, the game did a better job. I feel like in the game where you realize that Joel is going to show up and he's going to take her, just tugged at my heartstrings a lot more, I think. Maybe it was because there was so much drama in this episode and a lot of tension, a lot of interpersonal conflict, that one conflict didn't feel like the highlight that it maybe should have felt like it was to me. I think maybe it felt a little bit rushed. And so that's kind of why I feel like maybe I could have done without some of the other conflicts. Is like I would have loved for them to focus really more on that decision of Joel thinking that he was going to leave Ellie and that was going to be the end of it. And I would have really liked that to have sat with us for longer than it did, because I think it felt like it was like 10 minutes. It felt really fast, and thus I never believed it. It felt like a decision that came out of nowhere that we didn't have a lot of context for. Yeah, it just didn't hit as hard. I think the episode was just a little bit too rushed. Or similar to the previous episode, the previous 2 episodes actually, with the Kathleen stuff. It's like I would have liked a lot more of certain things or a little bit less of them, rather than just like sprinkles of a couple of bits of drama that we only like sort of glimpsed the side of. I think in general, I felt like these last 3 were not as strong as the first 3, but I think that that's really just because the first 3 episodes are so unbelievably good. Hard act to follow no matter what, and I know a lot of TV shows have trouble in the middle. That doesn't make me any less excited for the next 2 episodes. But yeah, even the university part, it was nice to, again, see some cool Easter eggs and see how that played out, and especially expecting what was going to happen at the end there, and the final shift where Ellie's going to need to look after Joel. What I didn't like so much here was the university. You know, they get there after what should have been, I think, a bigger emotional struggle. They get to the university and the Fireflies aren't there. This is the path they were heading towards the whole time, and there was very little sign of devastation. It was more of a like, oh, on to the next one. Where I felt like in the game at that point, or really in general, it should have been like, oh shit, they're not here. We've been waiting for months. Like, it just felt like it should have been a more impactful realization, a more devastating realization, rather than, oh, just keep moving. It was just played off very casually that they had left the university, I felt, where there should have been a little bit more depth there. And again, maybe I'm only feeling that way because I'm comparing it to the game, which I felt like definitely, like, that depth gripped me very strongly. But it was ultimately very fast. They don't spend much time in the university, and then Joel, of course, gets stabbed quite quickly, to the extent that we didn't even really have too much insight into the cure here, which kind of would have been the right place to put it, I would have thought. Like, I feel like this is the area where we let the audience know what the Fireflies are trying to do, and if it's working or if it's not working, or how they progressed on a cure and what this means for the world. But I'm assuming that that's not there because it's going to show up somewhere else in the show. It just seemed like it would have been a really nice, neat place to put that context or that drama. They clearly aren't here. They left. Why did they leave? What went wrong? Why didn't the tests work? If they didn't work, and what does it mean for Joel and Ellie's journey? But yeah, we didn't really get a ton of that. I feel like the university was more there to look cool, and it did, and then have the action sequence there at the very end with Joel. And I will say, the end of this almost made me go, wait, did he die? Because video game-wise, it makes sense that you go off and get someone and come back and you med-kit him up or whatever it was. It seemed, like, that dude really seemed like he was dead. Like, surely they don't kill Joel here. There's no way that's what's happening. But it made me question it, which is like a great way to end the episode, I think. And I also felt like watching Bella Ramsey over Joel was her best performance yet. I thought that was absolutely wonderful. Such sincere, desperate devastation as a result of seeing him get injured again when she's just admitting how much she needs him finally and having that vulnerability. So that this episode did a lot of groundwork in terms of like actually feeding us people's insecurities and explaining behaviors and giving us more insight into what's going on in their heads as they're trying to brave this journey for one another. And I feel like it did a fantastic job of exactly doing that thing that it needed to do. Some of the best performances of the entire series, hands down. I think it was just sort of a bit of a pacing problem. Again, the drama in this episode felt like melodrama because it was so fast. It was just so quick. Some of the scenes that I would have liked to have had more impact here, where they did have a lot more impact in the game, also felt very, very quick. And while we did get more detail on certain things, like I loved learning about Jackson and how the town operates and seeing that commune. I felt like that was a fantastic choice, and getting more detail there, and the movie theater and all of that. There were details that were expanded on that I really liked, but the emotional stakes were just so fast that it's almost like we try to grab onto them and they just flooded away. But they did get the important things down. They did get Joel and Ellie's relationship to a point where I feel like it needed to be at this point, and they've paced that very, very, very well, stringing us along slowly, watching these two people get closer and closer and closer. And I thought the Sarah reveal was really strong too, where Ellie finds out about Sarah, and obviously Joel is still very defensive about that. Oh, also the Joel panic attack stuff, that was new, and I feel like really gave his character a bit more life. Yeah, I think I ultimately left this episode like very happy with Joel and Ellie's characters and their character arcs and the journey those characters are going on. Just felt like some of the scenes were a little either too fast, so they felt sort of unnecessary and melodramatic, or perhaps there were just a few too many conflicts. So those two characters and their conflict couldn't be fleshed out in the way that I would have loved. All of that said, I know a lot of people out there think that this is the perfect show, and so inevitably going to be mad at me for not loving this one. I would still have given it like an 8. Like, it's still very good. I think it's just, in the middle, things are tough. It's really hard to do, and I feel like that the way this is going to break up is the way a lot of shows are, which is 1, 2, and 3, fantastic. 4, 5, and 6, a little less good, but still very good, just because the pacing's so hard. But they have achieved exactly what they needed to, which is the more important thing. And then I'm expecting the last 3 to also be bunched together a bit like a movie and be fantastic as well. I don't think I've forgotten anything. I think that's it. I'm still streaming the game when possible. Again, traveling this week, so it's a little bit tough, but trying to stream it mostly alongside the show. And we'll maybe have the podcast up this week where I talk to a couple of friends about it. I'm not sure. I'll do my best, but if not, I will see you next week to talk about more Last of Us. Thanks for watching, everyone. Bye!